I downloaded the dating app because something in my gut wouldn't shut up. Not to catch her. Not even to confirm anything. I just needed to check. Call it intuition, paranoia, whatever. But something had been off for weeks, months, maybe. The kind of shift you don't notice all at once. It creeps in around the edges. Subtle at first, like a song playing under a loud conversation. But eventually, the noise dies down, and you realize that background melody was something different all along. Sam had started working out again. Which was fine. We'd both let ourselves relax during the winter, and she said she wanted to feel strong again. But the gym sessions got longer. Then there were work meetings she never talked about afterward, even when I asked how they went. The biggest change, though, was her phone. That thing used to be a shared space. She'd leave it face up on the table, toss it on the couch when we watched TV. Now. She clutched it like a lifeline. Turned the screen away when I walked by. Sometimes I'd catch her smiling down at it, only to lock it the second I glanced over. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Trust is important. We'd been together for 3 years. Lived together for the last 2. Talked about marriage, kids, a future. I'd met her family, spent Thanksgiving with them. She knew my passwords, my favorite comfort food, and the weird way I crack my knuckles when I'm stressed. But there's a special kind of silence you get used to when someone's hiding something from you. It's not just the absence of words, it's a heavy, calculated stillness. Like they're managing what you know instead of sharing what they feel. That's what started to feel familiar. So one night, after she'd gone to bed early claiming a headache, I sat on the couch with my laptop and re-downloaded the dating app we both swore we'd deleted. I didn't even have to scroll far. Her name was different, just the first letter of her real one, paired with a fake last name that sounded suspiciously like her high school mascot. The profile said she was single, 29, into yoga and real conversations. The part that made my heart sink, though, wasn't the lies. It was the photo. It was my photo. I'd taken it 6 months ago in Maine. We were hiking near Acadia, and she was standing on a cliff's edge, the ocean behind her. She said she loved that picture. I remember editing it, brightening the sky, softening the shadows on her face. She posted it on her Instagram back then with some cheesy caption about adventure. Now here it was, recycled as bait for strangers. The profile was fresh. Updated that week. New photos, too, ones I hadn't seen. Maybe ones she didn't want me to see. Her bio mentioned weekend wine tastings, a love for indie films, and how she was tired of superficial connections. Funny thing was, she hated wine. Thought it gave her headaches. She'd fall asleep during indie films. And she wasn't looking for connection, she had one, or at least she used to. I sat there, rereading every line, every lie, every carefully selected image. My chest felt tight, but not with anger. Not yet. Just this cold kind of clarity. Like seeing smoke in a room and finally understanding there's been a fire the whole time. I didn't confront her. Not right away. There was too much emotion packed into too small a space. I knew myself well enough to know I'd say something I couldn't take back. Or worse, I'd let her twist it. She was good at that. Turning questions into accusations. Tears on command. I'd ask why, and somehow end up apologizing. So I closed the app. Saved the profile. Took screenshots of everything. Then I stared at the wall until the silence felt less like betrayal and more like fuel. If she wanted to play games, fine. I'd just become a player too. Creating the profile felt like a betrayal of myself. Not of Sam, not after what I'd seen, but of the part of me that still wanted to believe people were better than this. Still, curiosity has its own momentum, especially when it's fueled by hurt. The name came to me instantly, Mark. Strong. Unthreatening. The kind of guy who opens jars without bragging about it. I used a stock photo I found on a royalty-free site, a guy with a 5 o'clock shadow, messy hair, and a warm, lazy smile. He looked like the kind of man women on dating apps swore they wanted, rugged but kind, approachable but just mysterious enough to be interesting. I gave Mark a job at the local fire department. Added a few lines about volunteering at the animal shelter, a deep respect for mental health, and a passion for Sunday hikes. It was the kind of profile designed to slide perfectly into Sam's wishlist. And sure enough, it worked. Within an hour, she matched. Seeing her name in that new context hit me harder than I expected. There she was, barely veiled behind a cutesy pseudonym, just a few blocks away, claiming to be single and searching for something real. Her profile hadn't changed since I first saw it. Still listed yoga, red wine, and good conversation over games. Still claimed she wasn't here for hookups. Still wore the smile I used to think was just for me. Her first message came fast, like she'd been waiting. The words were casual but loaded, the kind you send when you're tired of pretending and just want someone to listen. Reading it made my skin crawl. It was flirtatious, familiar in its rhythm, like she'd said the same things to a dozen strangers. Or worse, like she meant it, just not to me. Over the next few days, we talked. Rather, she talked, and I listened, from behind the mask of Mark. Every notification made my stomach tighten. She didn't know it was me, but every word was a fresh cut. She said she finally felt seen, that most guys didn't get her. She described her current situation like it was some forced cohabitation with a roommate who didn't know how to love her properly. She called her boyfriend emotionally absent. Claimed there hadn't been real intimacy in months. Said she felt like she was fading into the background of her own life. All while living in my apartment, using my Wi-Fi, and eating the leftovers I packed for her lunch. What got me wasn't just the lies, it was how easy they came. There was no hesitation, no guilt. She crafted an alternate version of herself like she'd done it before. Maybe she had. Maybe Mark wasn't the first guy she'd fed this story to. Maybe I was just the one dumb enough to keep believing her. Still, I played along. I became what she said she wanted. Supportive, witty, attentive. I asked about her dreams. I listened when she vented. I even complimented her choice in music, music she never played around me, because, apparently, I wasn't someone she could share that side with. She responded like someone starved. Starved for validation. Starved for newness. She flirted more boldly with every passing day, getting bolder in the things she said, braver in the fantasies she shared. She even joked about sneaking away for a weekend escape with Mark. Said it'd be nice to be someone else for a while. Someone honest. The irony would have been laughable if it didn't hurt so much. There were moments, fleeting ones, when I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Not because of what she was doing, but because of how familiar it all felt. I'd seen that version of her before. The giggly, flirty, open-hearted Sam. That's how she was with me in the beginning. The version she gave to Mark wasn't new, it was just rerouted. I began to wonder when exactly I stopped being the recipient and started being the obstacle. Was it something I missed? Something I stopped doing? Or had this always been her pattern, charming, extracting, discarding? Had I just happened to last longer than the others? One night, after another flurry of messages filled with half-truths and innuendo, I just sat there and stared at the screen. My apartment was quiet. Sam was asleep in the other room, less than 20 feet from where I was sitting, wrapped in the blanket I bought her for Christmas. That's when it hit me, not just what she was doing, but what I was doing. I was engaging in a fictional relationship with my real-life girlfriend. Living a lie to expose one. The layers of deception twisted into something grotesque. But I couldn't stop. I wasn't doing this for revenge. Not yet. I was doing it for confirmation. I needed to see just how far she'd go. How much of what we had was still real, if any? She had no clue it was me behind the screen. And somehow, that made it worse. Because it meant that nothing in the way she responded to Mark made her pause. Not the mannerisms. Not the timing. Not the questions. She didn't even recognize my voice disguised as someone else's. At the end of that week, she told Mark she wanted to meet. Said she'd had enough of texting. Enough of hiding. She wanted to see him in person. She said she was ready for something real. I stared at her message for a long time, thumbs hovering over the screen. This wasn't about gut feelings anymore. This wasn't a maybe. It was a fact. A documented, undeniable truth. And if she wanted something real, she was about to get it. There's a specific kind of adrenaline that comes with watching a lie unravel in real time. It's not like anger or heartbreak. It's colder. Quieter. Like standing on the edge of something sharp and knowing you're the one holding the blade. After a week of playing the role of Mark, Max decided it was time. Time to see what she'd do if the fantasy crossed into reality. So he made the suggestion, subtly, casually, just a hint that maybe it was time to meet in person. No pressure, just a chance to finally put faces to names and make the connection real. She didn't hesitate. She said yes with all the enthusiasm of someone who believed they were stepping into a perfect story, not walking straight into the wreckage of one. She even picked the place, a high-end restaurant known for its candlelit booths, string lights, and live acoustic sets on weekend nights. The kind of place people get engaged in. The kind of place Max had once joked about taking her to for an anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on him. That's when the plan took shape, fully and completely. No more passive checking. No more gathering clues in silence. This wouldn't be a confrontation. It would be a presentation. Of truth. Of who she was when no one was watching. And of how thoroughly she'd underestimated him. The first piece was Rachel. She worked with Max in the marketing department and had a flair for design. More importantly, she had access to a high-end office printer. The kind that made even napkins look like luxury branding. When Max told her what he needed, Sam's dating app bio, formatted elegantly and printed onto dozens of cloth napkins, she didn't ask questions. Just raised an eyebrow, gave a low whistle, and told him she'd have them by noon. He reserved the booth at the restaurant under Mark, making sure it was the corner table tucked beneath the arch of hanging lights. It was a spot Sam wouldn't see until she was already seated. The kind that felt intimate by accident. Private, but not hidden. Then came the setting. Max arrived an hour early. Not because he needed to, just because he couldn't sit still. He wore a tailored jacket, something clean and neutral, the kind of outfit you choose when you don't want your face to give anything away. His hands didn't shake, but his stomach burned like he'd swallowed something boiling. The hostess showed him to the booth, and he got to work. Every detail mattered. A small vase of roses in the center. A bottle of wine chilling in an ice bucket to the side, her favorite type, the one she used to insist, tasted like weekends. He dimmed the candles slightly and laid out the napkins himself. Each place setting had one, folded neatly beneath the silverware. White napkins. Black text. Simple font. And there it was, her full dating profile, front and center. Independent, emotionally intelligent, and tired of games. Looking for someone real, not another project. I like red wine, indie films, spontaneous weekends away, and someone who can hold a conversation that goes deeper than small talk. Word for word. Every line carefully placed so that when she sat down, her eyes would land directly on her own script. Max sat back and looked at the table. It was perfect in a way that felt almost theatrical. The stage was set, and the actors had their cues. Now all he had to do was wait for the star. Time passed slowly in those few moments before she arrived. Servers passed by, offering polite nods. A soft tune played from the corner of the room. Laughter from another table echoed faintly, distant enough not to matter. Outside the window, the sun was just beginning to set, painting the sky with that warm, golden hue that makes everything feel softer than it really is. Max didn't feel soft. He felt exact. Minutes ticked by. The wine slowly sweated in its bucket. He checked his watch, not because he was nervous, but because he knew she was never late to something she cared about. Then he saw her. There's a moment, when someone realizes the mask they've been wearing just fell off, where everything freezes, face, posture, breath. Sam walked into that moment without a clue. She stepped through the restaurant doors like she was stepping into a fantasy, not a trap. Hair curled with intention, makeup touched up just enough to look effortless. She wore the red dress. The one Max bought her last year on a random Tuesday because she said she never had anything special to wear. She always saved that dress for events where she wanted to feel in control, where she expected attention to follow her. Her eyes scanned the room with a sort of rehearsed curiosity, searching for the man she'd been flirting with for a week. The man who didn't exist. The man she thought she wanted. Her steps faltered when she spotted Max. Not immediately. She didn't recognize him at first. He was seated in the shadows, candlelight flickering over his face, one hand casually turning a folded napkin between his fingers. But then recognition hit. Hard. Her smile vanished like a switch had been flipped. Her pace slowed. And for a brief second, the restaurant didn't exist. Just her, Max, and the truth suspended between them. She hesitated at the edge of the table, as if walking any closer might physically expose her more than she already was. But curiosity, or maybe pride, carried her the final steps. She glanced down, her hands brushing the edge of the table, and her eyes locked onto the napkin. Printed in sharp, clean lines was her own dating profile. Her words. Her phrases. Her curated self-image, now decor for the dinner table. The blood drained from her face. Max didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched. Calm. Cold. Detached in the way only someone fully prepared could be. There was no raised voice, no demand for answers. Just an eerie stillness. And that napkin spinning slowly between his fingers. Sam's mouth opened and closed, her expression cycling through confusion, guilt, embarrassment, then something more familiar, defensiveness. Her posture changed. Her eyes hardened. The performer in her woke up. She shifted from caught to cornered. From vulnerable to vicious. The lies came quickly, too quickly. Facial expressions too animated. Gestures too exaggerated. It was the same rhythm Max had seen in past arguments, the denial, the faux confusion, the subtle accusation that he was somehow making this up. That he was overreacting. That if she had done anything wrong, it was only because she felt unloved. Unseen. Like it was his fault she had wandered. He didn't bite. He let her squirm. He let her sweat through every mental pivot, every attempt to rewrite the situation while she was still standing in the middle of it. She tried guilt next. The voice softened. The eyes widened. Pleading, like maybe he didn't understand, like maybe there was still a way to charm her way out of it. But there was no way out. Not this time. Max picked up his phone and calmly slid it across the table. On the screen, open and unmissable, was a message thread, screenshots attached. The profile. The messages. Her face. Her words. Sent, just hours ago, to 3 contacts, her mother, her sister, and one of their mutual friends. Sam's breath hitched. She didn't need to touch the phone. She knew exactly what was in those messages. And she knew, for the first time, there was nothing she could say that would erase them. Max didn't speak, but his expression made everything clear. He wasn't looking for an explanation. He wasn't here to fight. He was here to show her what she'd done. He'd always wondered what truth looked like when you stripped the noise away. Now he knew. It looked like a woman choking on her own lies in a room full of strangers. It looked like silence louder than screaming. It looked like justice served not with fire, but with facts. Sam stood there, frozen. Torn between shame and the desperate desire to regain control. But there was no control left. Max had taken it back the second she walked in. He pulled the final card from his pocket, a cleanly folded check, already signed, already filled out for the dinner that would never happen. He tucked it between two napkins, both printed with her bio. One neatly folded, one slightly crumpled from where his fingers had pressed too hard. Then he stood. He didn't look at her again. Didn't wait for tears or another excuse. He didn't offer a parting line or a final dig. He didn't need to. She had spoken enough for both of them, in every lie, every message, every fake smile she'd thrown at a man who didn't exist. As he walked away from the table, from the restaurant, from her, he felt no satisfaction. Just clarity. This wasn't revenge. It was closure. Behind him, she remained rooted in place. The room didn't pause for her discomfort. Servers moved past. Conversations picked back up. Wine was poured. But in that little corner of the world, her world had cracked wide open. Max didn't look back. He didn't need to see her face. He'd already seen enough. The fallout was swift, though not unexpected. Sam didn't go down quietly. Within 24 hours of the restaurant, she was already rewriting the story. In her version, she was the victim. Max was controlling, paranoid. She told people he'd been going through something. That he'd set her up, trapped her in a scene that made him look clever and her look cruel. But printed napkins don't lie. Neither do screenshots. Especially when the timestamps line up. Especially when the words she used were unmistakably her own. Max didn't have to defend himself, the evidence had done the talking. And the people who mattered listened. The first wave of texts came from mutual friends. Short, a little awkward, but clear in their intent. They'd seen the proof. They were sorry. They had no idea. Then came the call from Sam's sister, the one Max had always gotten along with. Her voice cracked with guilt. She admitted she'd believed Sam's stories for too long. That maybe it had been easier to take Sam's word than to look closer. She said she was sorry for not seeing it sooner. Max appreciated it, but the apology didn't ease the sting. The truth was, he didn't feel victorious. Just tired. The silence after the storm was deeper than he'd imagined, and lonelier. The apartment felt different. Cleaner, maybe. Lighter. But it also echoed now. Her things were gone. Her scent lingered on a jacket he hadn't had the heart to wash yet. Her toothbrush still sat in the bathroom drawer, tucked into the back like some ghost of routine. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just lived through it. Day by day. There were moments he questioned everything, not just her choices, but his. Had he missed the signs for too long? Had he let himself ignore what was right in front of him? Or worse, had he been holding on to something that had been hollow for a while? What stayed with him most wasn't the anger. It was the way she'd lied so easily. How her betrayal wasn't fueled by conflict or distance or some dramatic event. It had happened in the small cracks. Quietly. Casually. Almost like she thought it wouldn't matter. But it did. It mattered more than she'd ever understand. Still, in the quiet, Max learned something. He'd trusted his gut, even when it made him feel paranoid. He'd stayed composed when it would have been easier to explode. And in the moment of truth, when every emotion begged to lash out, he'd kept his dignity. He hadn't let her lies drag him down into the mud with her. He chose clarity over chaos. And in a strange way, that gave him peace. Life started to move again. Work got busy. He reconnected with friends, took long walks in the park just to remind himself the world still turned. Slowly, the weight lifted. Not all at once. But enough. Then came the twist. It happened on a Sunday, the kind where time stretches and the air smells like coffee and cut grass. Max was walking through a street fair, nursing a cold brew, when he saw a face he knew, or thought he knew. The guy looked familiar, but not in the real-life way. More like something pulled from a screen. It hit him in a blink. The man from the stock photo. He wasn't sure what made him speak, curiosity, maybe. Or just the absurdity of it all. But the guy smiled when Max introduced himself, confirmed who he was, and laughed in that easy, surprised way people do when something surreal clicks into place. Turns out, the guy really was a firefighter. Worked in the next town over. Single. Had a dog named Trooper. Genuinely rescues puppies on the weekends. They grabbed a beer from a nearby stand and swapped stories. Max didn't spill every detail, but gave enough for the guy to understand. Enough for them both to laugh. The absurdity of it was too good not to share. The guy asked if Max was back on the apps. If he was looking again. That was the moment Max smiled for real, not a forced one, not one for appearances. Just a quiet, knowing grin. He told him no. Not looking for anything fake this time. And he meant it. He wasn't bitter. Just changed. A little more careful, a little less trusting. But still hopeful. Because even after all that, the lies, the betrayal, the fallout, he knew who he was. And that version of himself didn't need to hide behind someone else's name. As the sun dipped low and the fair lights flickered on, Max walked away from the stand with a lighter step. No more pretending. No more guessing. Just himself, moving forward, slowly, steadily, toward whatever came next. Not perfect. Not patched up. But whole.